My name is Brandon. I'm a former police sergeant and assistant SWAT team leader. Today, my mission continues with a remarkable organization called Here Tomorrow, whose mission is the removal of all barriers to mental health support in order to save lives. Welcome to our podcast, Clearing the Minefield. The men and women in uniform who will be our guests have made extraordinary sacrifices in service to their people. Now, with strength and resilience, they live their lives on the road to wellness. We ask you to understand that some of the raw and real experiences they'll be sharing may be unsettling to some viewers. Now walk with me, friend, as we clear the minefield. Welcome back to Clearing the Minefield. Today we've got an incredible guest, Mike Goodale, who's got an exceptional story. You might have seen part of it on a little movie called Blackhawk Down, but we're going to get there. I want to take a moment to thank our sponsors, Demons Behind Me. You go to demonsbehindme.com, you can see their line of apparel, which is mental health forward. These guys have a badass brand with some badass clothes, and they fit dudes like us, so you're going to want to check them out. Remarkable brand there that really does put mental health forward, puts their money where their mouth is when it comes to helping military and first responders, so we appreciate the help. Mike, welcome.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm honored to be asked to come in and talk,
Well, it's a big ask, man. I know it's not always easy to share the things that we go through in our service, but I appreciate having the guts to step forward and do that and just kind of be the example for people. Really appreciate it.
And if it helps one man, one woman, then we're good, right?
I don't doubt that it will. I'm sure it will. I don't doubt that it will. Mike, we're going to get the ball rolling. Where'd you grow up?
So I grew up down in central Illinois, small town outside of Peoria, pretty typical childhood. I was the youngest of three, and long gap between myself and my two older sisters. Might have been an oops, I don't know, but but really, I was kind of like an only child growing up with older siblings, and just went to school, got into sports. I was a wrestler, got into competitive wrestling. I think when I was 8, my oldest sister was like one of the statisticians for the high school team. And nice. So, I ended up as a little brother going into, some of the practices, and the varsity wrestlers would throw me around for a bit, and really got into it. So, stayed with that all the way through school. And, then it was off to college because, I was, of course, a kid of the 70s and 80s. And what do you do after high school? You go to college.
That's the plan.
And so I actually had I applied to West Point. My eldest sister had actually gone through ROTC and received her commission and was on active duty with her husband.
Nice.
Out at Fort Bragg. And is it Fort Liberty now? I don't know, whatever it is right now.
Whatever it is today, yeah.
Right. But, I was always fascinated with the idea of, sort of serving in the military. So, I applied to West Point. I applied to, the service academies. Didn't quite work out. Apparently, I didn't have the proper connections. And
I got to push pause for a second. I'm super curious about something. Did you wrestle in college?
Intramurals only.
Okay. Yeah. So it's, man, one of the best sports in the world. I think if you can wrestle, you can do anything,
Oh yeah, absolutely. Wow. Right. And it was funny because I actually went to the University of Iowa.
Okay.
And
wow, that's a program.
I did not get into their wrestling program. That was not my caliber. But I did do, intramurals, a little bit there. But nice. At that point, I had gotten a 3-year ROTC full ride.
Nice.
And so I was in their program. And my first year, I really enjoyed college far too much because, of course, I didn't have to go to class. So I didn't. And I ended up, I think, my first semester with a 1.47 GPA. And I was called in by the cadre, and they're like, yeah, remember that scholarship you had? I said, what do you mean had? They're like, no, you had. It's no longer there. And
consequences, man.
Consequences, right? And so that was one of the worst calls I ever had with my parents. Was like, hey, guess what? I lost that scholarship. You were going to have to pay for college now. And they were
Oops.
like, okay, we think your education is more important. We will continue to fund all of this, and get your grades up. So, I did buckle down. My grades did come up, but that whole second year that I was there was rough. And I was kind of struggling, and I started talking with my sister, and I was like, this is tough. I don't think I'm going to get a scholarship back. And, I'm not having fun in college.
Yeah.
And between she and her husband, and they kind of talked to me for a while, like, you know what? College isn't for everybody. Maybe you want to take some time off. And at the time, my brother-in-law, I think he was a first lieutenant, and he was running a medical support platoon or something. He had already gone through airborne school, gone to Ranger school, graduated in the 82nd Airborne, and I was like,
Nice. No pressure.
I want to be like that. Yeah. And all of a sudden now he's sending me, like files of, this is how you get to a Ranger battalion. And I was like, well, what the hell's a Ranger battalion? Right. And he kind of gave me some literature about it. He's like, you know what? Maybe you're just not ready for college. And here's the thought. What if you were to take some time off, enlist? You can go in, through that pipeline to get to a Ranger battalion. You'll get all kinds of great training in schools. And once you get done with that, you can go back to school. You can get a commission. Because originally the whole plan was I wanted to be a commissioned officer and do a 20-year career there, right? And that was my focus. And so then when that was kind of falling apart, I was like, okay, well, let's shift directions. I think maybe I'll enlist. So I did. That was another fun conversation I had with my parents. Oh, and by the way, I'm leaving college. I'm going to enlist.
Appreciate that opportunity, but
Yeah, exactly. Right. And honestly, I don't. My sister tells me that our mother didn't speak to her for about 6 months.
wow.
So it wasn't real great, but hey, it was what it was. So I enlisted, and I actually went back to my hometown recruiter, the guy who had been trying to put me into the Army since I was in high school. I'm like, hey, college isn't working out. I need some help getting in. And he was like, I gotcha. And went through the whole, enlistment process. And at one point there was a glitch because I wanted to be an infantry guy. And I'm like, I want a 4-year contract, infantry, airborne school, and a guaranteed shot at a Ranger battalion. And I got into the station, and they're like, yeah, we don't have any slots for that. And I'm like,
Of course.
it's infantry. How can you not have a slot for infantry? They're
Yeah.
like, we don't. I'm like, well, you better find something. And they came back with fire support specialist, which is basically an artillery guy, a spotter, who calls in artillery when the infantry needs more support. And I went back to my recruiter, whom I had actually trusted at this point. I'm like, what do you think about this?
At this
He's
point.
like, yeah, right.
Yes.
It's like, listen, that's actually a great job, right? You'll be doing everything that the infantry is doing, and you're carrying a radio, and you can take that one to bank. And I'm like, okay, fine. So I signed up. I did it. Went through the pipeline. I will admit, it was the best job in the Army.
Was
right?
it? Nice.
I swear it. Ask any forward observer, and they will tell you, yes, best job ever.
Nice.
And they always have a bad reputation for getting out of details and work and all that. We did sham a lot, but we did some really cool stuff. Calling in Spectre gunships, calling in attack helicopters, and and jets. But how much more fun can you do with that, right?
It does sound like a ton of fun.
And given that it was 1990, it was a peacetime Army. So calling in those things, that is fun. It's an awesome thing to be able to get on a radio and control a, multi-million-dollar
No way.
aircraft and say, hey, that's the target over there. Put the guns on that. Nope, you missed. Move it over by 50 meters and then shoot it again. And then, move it to a different target or whatever, right?
Yeah.
They
Sounds
do
like a video game.
well, it is, and it's also, here I am, a private in the Army, talking on the radio, controlling these, multi-million-dollar machines being run by a lieutenant colonel or a captain or whatever,
Mm.
and I'm telling him what to do. That's awesome, and they're doing it, and this is really fun, right? So anyway, that's sort of how I got into it, right?
Okay.
Went through airborne training, went through RIP, which was the Ranger Indoctrination program.
Getting there.
Yeah. And that was about a 3-week session of, let's make you quit kind of thing. Our class went from, I think, 120 some that started down to, I think, 43 graduated.
Sounds like they were good at that job, huh?
They were very good at the job. Yeah. Oh yeah. And there's no getting around it. It sucked.
I bet.
But the whole idea was that they didn't want somebody going to a Ranger battalion who was going to find out that it really sucks and then just go, I'm done. I quit. Even though there were still more people that and I know a couple of guys specifically, they specifically made it through RIP. They got assigned to the battalion, and within the first 2 weeks, they were like, I'm out, and they requested to be dropped. And from that kind of unit, they will be more than happy to accommodate you. If you say, I don't want to be there, they're like, we don't want you here. Get out.
Yeah.
So there were guys that did that, right? So that got me to, a Ranger battalion.
And it was everything you hoped and dreamed of?
Yeah.
Yeah. I say that jokingly, but honestly, I bet, man, it's a lot to go through to get to that point.
It really is, but I found my people.
Yeah.
Right. And even when it was people screaming at me and yelling at me to run faster or do more push-ups, do more dips, whatever. Okay. Yeah, that's what I'm here for. Let's do this. Let's get the training. And again, it was a peacetime Army. So doing that, it was like, yeah, we're training, we're playing Army, right? It's a cool thing, right?
Yeah.
But then in the back of all of our minds was, yeah, we're training for war. That's our job, is to go to war. So, if there's an opportunity to go to war, everybody wanted it, right? So
Well, it's an interesting thing too, because I've heard people speak ill of folks who are training for war, whatever your field is, or training for SWAT or Ranger School, whatever it is, and to say I want to go do the job. You think about an athlete. Would an athlete want to train to play football their entire life and then not get in the game?
never play. Well,
Right.
and that's how I tried to explain it to my mother after Somalia and all of that. I said, Mom, we wanted to go. We asked to go to war. She's like, how could you ever ask for that? I said, and she was a nurse. I said, okay, imagine you go through your entire nursing career and you never get to treat a patient. And of course, with the mother's love, she said, that's not the same. I said, no, it's exactly the same. This is what we train for. This is our business. And we want to do our business and see if all of the training that we do actually works.
Yeah.
So yeah, we trained hard, we did, various missions. What's the official word for, Rangers do, light infantry missions and direct action or something like that, right? In accordance with DoD policy and some. Anyway, So we did training in Korea. We went to Panama. We went to England. Um, we jumped in on airfields all over the U.S. and did an airfield seizure and practiced how we would set up blocking positions and all of that, and calling in attack helicopters to support us in all of this. Yeah, we were good at it, right? Um,
So I just got to say, man, already just in training, you've done some extraordinary things that the vast majority of Americans will never even touch. How are you feeling at this point about yourself and like your place in the world at that point?
uh, we were, dare I say, cocky? Yeah, we were.
Dare
Um,
you say?
yeah, well, we're airborne rangers, right?
Right.
At the time, we're the only ones in the army who are wearing a black beret, you
Wow.
know, um, and we were good. We were good at what we did,
Mhm.
right? Um,
And that's the thing too. A lot of people say, fighters, warriors should be humble, but man, if you train to that point and you think I'm preparing for war, I want to go to war. I'm preparing for this fight. I want to get into this fight. At some point, at some level, you got to think, man, I'm it. I'm the stuff, man. Or you're just not
oh,
going to have the
sure.
ability to walk into that.
Yeah, and especially with the reputation of the Ranger Regiment, uh, 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 a buck sergeant, from a Ranger battalion can walk into a room and basically command what's going on in the room, or have a presence in that room of, I know what's happening. This is how we're going to do this. Right. So they have a command presence for
Yeah.
sure. And that goes from, the battalion commander all the way down to, specialists and privates,
Mm.
because of the way they train, the way they drill, and just the caliber of soldier that they are, you know. Um, so, so yeah, we were good.
Yeah.
We knew we were good, and yes, we would welcome the chance to be tested. I remember when I had just gotten to battalion when the first Gulf War had just ended,
Mm.
right? So the pushing the Iraqis out of Kuwait. And I remember hearing stories from, some of the guys who were in the unit when the Gulf War actually kicked off, and they were fuming because they didn't get the call. There was, I think, one company from First Battalion that actually did a mission in the first Gulf War. Everybody else was kind of on alert and ready, and they never got the call. And dudes were, throwing stuff against walls, and they were angry because they couldn't go, right? So in '93, let me take a little bit of a step back.
Okay.
I think it was either late '92 or early '93. We deployed to Thailand
Mm.
for a training mission, and we got to work with a unit of Thai Rangers. And we were doing we were kind of doing an exchange, where this company of Thai Rangers would show us how they would attack an objective, right? And it was all live fire. And at the time, we were kind of in awe of them,
Mm.
because we're like, these guys are in the shit all the time. They actually get into border skirmishes with other guys. They're actual war fighters.
Right.
And they came over to us and they're like, wow, we want to do what you guys are doing. We're like, we're playing right now, right? And I remember one of the live fires. We had done, blank fires, dry fires, just rehearsing how we would attack this objective. And then we went live, right? And we were watching as the ties went through it. And they're shooting grenades and rifles and machine guns, all of this stuff. And I watched one guy, and he just kind of rolled over because they were, you know, individual movement technique. I'm up, he sees me, I'm down, then I'm fighting, firing. This dude just kind of rolled over, waved his hand like real nonchalant, and a medic ran up to him. He had gotten a frag in his foot
Oh.
from this live fire, And I mean, he wasn't screaming. He wasn't, worked up about it. He's like, hey, yeah, okay, right. And we were just like, holy shit, dude just got messed up. And he's not even thinking of it. We're like, wow, okay, cool, right? But one of the training things that we did in that, on that deployment was uh, we our company commander, unbeknownst to a lot of people, had our supply guy go down to a local market and buy a bunch of cow intestines that were in plastic bags. And part of the objective was we were clearing trenches, and we had mannequins inside the trenches as targets. And he had the supply guy put the cow guts inside these mannequins.
I have
And
to admit, I was wondering, what does one do with a bag of carrots? So we're about to
right.
learn, I guess.
And all of a sudden, we're going through and clearing these trenches and lighting up these mannequins. And all of a sudden, it's just spilling guts and filth out of it. And then guys are running up and taking a knee in it and, almost gagging and puking because it had been sitting in, 98 degrees uh, heat for about a day. So it was god awful, right?
Fantastic.
Yeah. But all of a sudden, and when that happened, people saw this, these guts falling out after firing up a target. And they were like, whoa. And it froze them for a minute. They were like, whoa, I've never seen this. And so they had to process through that, right?
Mhm.
Fast forward, that was some of the best training we could have done to get us ready
Oh,
for
hell yeah.
Somalia because we had seen that, and so when we got there and everything went to hell, yeah, we've seen blood and guts from a bullet, through someone, right? Yeah.
What you're saying is so interesting. I think a lot of folks don't understand this. It's what I might call stress inoculation, right? So
Mm-hmm.
when we're exposed to things in training that are just traumatic, they would be if they were real. It, as you're saying, to some degree, mentally, that helps you build a capacity and to kind of prehabilitate yourself for the resilience that you're going to need to get through these things. And you feel like that's one of the things that helped you push through at Mogadishu.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I know, our medics do all kinds of, realistic training, things like that. That helped them immensely. But I absolutely agree with it. And I don't want to sit there and say, hey, my trauma was more so than someone else's trauma. And we've talked about this before that, trauma is trauma. And it's how you're exposed to that and how you can build up a tolerance or kind of an immunity to it, whereas something that I may see something like someone broke an arm, at the gym or whatever, and I'd be kind of nonplussed by the whole thing, right?
Right.
Whereas somebody who has never been exposed to anything might see it as, oh my God, this person's going to die.
Yeah.
And they may lose their ability to function because they're processing all of their trauma there, where you or myself may be like, okay, hey, just calm down, let's sit down, let me go find a splint, relax, breathe, right, and we'll get through this. Where because of our different exposures,
And that's
right?
interesting. That's interesting, Mike, because you and I talked about this the other day, but it's like we tend to be okay in the emergency. We're okay in the crisis. We're good there. Well, we have a tough time. What we get this later on, I'm sure, is figure out how to be in normal shit.
Yeah,
That's kind
yeah,
of where we get stuck. So you've gone through all this training, all this preparation, and you feel like you're ready?
yeah. Oh, we were ready, man. We were ready. So we were actually at a training exercise down in Texas, and we got the call that said, hey, a company plus is going to go up to Bragg and you're going to put together with a task force for a real world mission. And we're all like, hell yeah, let's do this, right? And we got up there and we went through a train up and, we got to know our Delta squadron that we were supporting in this. And we were working with the Hilo regiment that was going to get us into the objective and how we were going to run this. And we did that for like 2 weeks, and we were jazzed. And then they were like, yeah, no, mission's canceled. Go on back to Texas. And we were like, oh, this sucks,
Yeah.
We were so close to doing this for real. And then they're like, no. So we got down to Texas, and like the entire battalion that was there, and we were just one company out of the battalion, and the battalion was made up of of two other companies. And so everybody was going to go on, a little bit of leave. Like people were going into Tijuana or wanting to go off post and do things that soldiers do, right?
As one does. As one does. Yes.
And there were a few folks that came back, and they were like, don't go into town. And it was kind of a down low. It was like, don't go. We're like, what? Okay. And there were some folks that were like, fuck that. I'm going out. I'm done. Well, the bubble broke, basically in the middle of the night. And like, yeah, pack your shit, get out on the airfield. It's 2:30 in the morning, and wait. And so we did. We waited there. And then we got on the plane, went back to Bragg. They're like, yep, mission's a go. This is how it's going to happen. And then we loaded up and went over to Somalia. Yeah.
You say that so casually. We just went over to Somalia.
Well, and that's what it was. It was going to be. They're like, this is the loadout plan. Get on it. Yeah, real world scenario. This is what you're doing. We're like, all right, cool. So that's what we did. Right. Got there, and the first night was pretty hilarious. My friend Mike and I got put out onto a guard shift because some of the helicopters, we didn't actually have anything built up around the helicopters to protect them, right? So we had to post a guard. And so Mike and I were both out on our guard shift, and we're locked and loaded. We have one pair of night vision goggles between the two of us, and we're standing around. We're like, wow, man, yeah, we're in a combat zone. Wow, how cool is this, right? And we heard a little gunfire off in the distance. We're like, wow.
Let me ask, Mike, how old were you at that point? What was your age?
23.
Oh, young man. Oh, okay.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
Right.
And, we're standing around these helicopters, and then we heard some scratching. We're like, what's that? What's that? Give me the night vision. I'm looking around, and I see this rat. I swear to God, this rat was huge. It would have eaten a New York rat.
Oh my God.
And it was kind of running along, and I'm like, Mike, what do we do? I mean, if we fire this rat up, everybody's going to go batshit crazy. We can't do that. So, do I pull out my knife and go hand to hand with the rat? Because you can't let the rat get to the helicopters.
Do they even have hands? What's it like? How do rats fight you?
Yeah, right. Yeah. So we were debating this between the two of us, and finally it just kind of turned. It was like, no, I'm done. It turned around and ran off. We're like, whew. Got through our first skirmish. Right.
First contact.
Yeah. So yeah, we were in a combat zone, right? And then we're trying to get acclimated to what life was like. And contrary to popular belief, combat zones are not running around with your hair on fire 100% of the time.
I want to ask you a quick question. I got to spend a little time in a seminar with Colonel McKnight years ago, and he talked about when y'all first got there, and he said he learned that the UN peacekeepers didn't have ammo. Was that your experience?
Yeah, honestly, I don't even know. I didn't interact with any of the peacekeepers.
Okay. That blew my mind. Holy cow.
Yeah, the most interaction we had was, so we were at a compound at the airfield, and it was sort of ringed by connexes and sandbags and all of that. And we had guard posts at certain points around the compound. And it was always fun for us because we were like, we're Army Rangers in Delta Force. You can't take pictures of us. And so if anybody drove by and like a 2.5 ton truck or whatever, it had troops in it, we might see somebody pulling up a camera. We would run out from our guard post. Give me your camera. And they're like, wait, what? No, you can't. Yes. And we're pointing a weapon at them, go, give me your camera now. We pull the film out in front of them, throw it down, get out of here, that sort of deal. So yeah,
Wow,
we
film.
were
I just had a flashback, man.
yeah.
You just said film. I was like, oh
Oh
my
yeah,
god,
right.
wow, we're old, man. From
Yeah, right.
7 years.
Yeah. So we would have fun with that, but outside of just sort of our general everyday, training, making sure we were still tuned like we should be, right? We would fly down the coast and set up a shooting range. And so then we'd practice, shooting skills and magazine drops and things like that. We would, Delta gave us a master class on, explosive breaching. And they're like, hey, this is how you make this kind of a charge. This is how you put it in place. This is what you do with it. Any questions? No? Okay. Why don't you guys go make some? and as of course a young man, a young ranger, we were like, hell yeah, let's go make some stuff blow up, right? And so yeah, we would make charges. We learned a whole bunch of stuff, and um,
I want to make a point here for listeners who maybe aren't. You talked about training your ass off when you get in. You're training your ass off in Thailand, all over the world. You're in theater now, man. You're in and you're training. I
and
don't
we're
think
still
it,
training.
and you're still training. I don't think many people have a concept of just what it takes to operate at a high level. They do a little bit of training on a weekend at some event and they think they're training, but this is life for you, right?
It was, yeah, and even the training. I mean, we would go out for runs for a squad run. It would be an entire squad running around the airfield, and one person is designated to carry the rifle with them,
Hmm.
right? And we always had rifle and a full mag or two with us as we do it. And it was funny actually. General Garrison was the mission commander on that, and he was kind of known for going out and doing his own PT. And he would walk by the front gate and hand them his pistol. He's like, "Hey, hold on to this until I get back." And the front gate guys were like, "Roger, sir." All right, well, hold on to it for you.
We're going to
And he,
say no, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
right. Um, so, like I said, most of the time we were either still training or we were bored out of our minds because we weren't doing missions. The op tempo compared to what the guys in the GWAT are doing
Mhm.
was, you know, apples and oranges. While, we did, I think, a total of 7 missions in Somalia over our 54 days.
Mhm.
Guys in the GWAT were deploying for, a 30-day period and doing 90 to 100 missions.
Wow.
That's insane.
Yeah, I
But
didn't realize
but
that.
that's the difference in, the intelligence and, the intelligence capabilities and the targeting and all of that. So, but it was kind of a new concept, that we were putting together what became the task force bruisers of Iraq, and those kinds of things. We were pioneering that stuff. So it was kind of a new concept, right? But yeah, we would train. We did a lot of profile flights. We'd load up our helicopters just to kind of get the Somalis used to seeing a float of 16 aircraft lifting off from the airfield and flying around the city.
Mm.
And then at one point, if it was an actual mission, we'd fly around the city, find our target, drop in on it, and do our mission, and then get out. It worked. Unfortunately, the Somalis, started paying a little more attention to it.
Mm.
And they're like, oh, this is what they're doing. Okay. And so they started watching us more and more. And then they started coming up with how they would, combat us in what we were trying to do. So, yeah. So that's what we did. I think I read the book Sphere about 3 times.
Mm.
Never changed, not once. Like I said, we got so bored every once in a while, the the Somalis would lob some mortars out at us. And the first few times we started, we were like, "Oh my God, mortars are coming in! Everybody get your kit on and get ready. We're going to go out and hit another target." And we do that, and as as the deployment wore on, we were kind of like, guys, just put the mortar round in the middle of this building that we're in to end this. We're bored. Stop it. You know, and I remember one night I was sitting there reading a book and some mortars hit, and then a couple people started yelling, and of course the FOs are like, no, 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 drop it 100 meters this way, you asshole, yelling at the Somalis that can't hear us, right?
But, I mean,
And then a round got a little bit closer, and the entire hangar just started cheering. It was absolutely insane. We were like, yeah, come on, guys, you're almost there, you're almost there.
so supportive.
Yes, right. um so yeah, so we were bored, and we wanted, we had done missions. Our missions were like 45 minutes. We'd go out, we'd fly in, hit the target, and arrest whoever was needed to be taken at that point, and then exfil, and then go back to the routine of training and getting ready and prepping and all of that.
Now, you mentioned that the Somalis are watching, right? Did you get a sense on these? You said you did 7 missions.
Mhm.
Did you get a sense as these missions progressed that they were adapting? Were you seeing that?
We weren't seeing a lot of it. No, it was, in retrospect, we know they were, right.
Right.
But at the time, we were also, hey, we're Army Rangers, we're Delta Force. These Somalis, they're not out running and lifting every day. They're not doing shooting drills. Who are these? They're insurgents, right? They can't hold a candle to us, right? And even after, there was one mission where I think we hit the Russian compound that was there. We almost got Adid, who was the warlord we were trying to capture.
Okay.
And in that, one of our guys, there was a big firefight, and one of my friends, Steve, got shot just above his kneecap, right through that muscle just above his knee. And we were all like, oh my God, Steve, he got shot by an AK in the leg. He's going to lose his leg. How are we going to deal with this? And I'll be damned if, 2 days later, Steve was back with the unit. The hospital, treated it. It was a through and through gunshot wound.
Wow.
So it was like a left, right, in that
Okay.
muscle, right?
Good. That's like winning the lottery if you got to get shot, man. Holy cow.
Totally. Yeah, right. So 2 days later, he's back with us, and we're like, oh, your leg's still on. He's like, yeah, I'm fine. Are we going out for a run? We're like, you can still walk. You can still walk. You can still run. Holy shit. These AK-47s don't do a damn thing to us, right? And another guy in that same firefight, he was a turret gunner, and he had his Kevlar helmet on. The round came in, hit him in the side of the Kevlar, traveled around the inside of the helmet, and went out the other side. He literally had a scratch on his head, a scratch from getting shot in the head. And so, that just fed into our ego like nobody's business. Like, yeah, you can't hurt us. Man, you shot a dude in the head, and he's got a scratch. You shot a dude in the leg, and he's running with us. They can't touch us, right? So yeah, there was a little bit of Superman complex going on with that.
Okay.
And then October 3rd came around.
That's a date.
Yeah. So I was actually writing a letter to my fiance at the time, and I was working on my tan because I was bored, right? And I saw a bunch of activity going back and forth from command back into the bunker, back into command. I'm like, ah, shit, here it comes. All right. So, hey, love, I'll talk to you later. Gonna go, got a little something to do here, right? So I go in, I start getting my stuff on, and then they're like, yeah, get it on. All right. And at that point, our briefings were like, here's a photocopy of the target building. chalk 1 is going to be at this corner, chalk 2 is here, 3 and 4 there. Delta's going to hit 30 seconds in. Then we're going to land, we're going to surround it, and then we're exfilling this way. All right, got it. Cool. Got everything on. 3:30, we hit the aircraft, and it was, launch. Let's go. And, everybody saw, Irene, fucking Irene. Yeah. Yeah. That actually happened. Right.
Wow.
So yeah, 3:30 in the afternoon, we launched, and then we got to the objective, and everybody kind of started thinking, this is going to be a little bit different. It was in a more dangerous part of the city, right? The Bakara market, and actually UN forces and I think the 10th Mountain as well, but UN forces were forbidden to go into this market area. It was an arms market, and they're like, nope, too dangerous. And we were like, we're Delta Force, we're Army Rangers, we don't care. This is where our target, it is meeting. And it wasn't even our target. It was some of his lieutenants. It was a meeting of like 17 of them. And we're like, this is too good to pass up.
Mm-hmm.
It's all the drug dealers in one house, so to speak.
Yeah.
We're going to that house, right?
Good and done.
So we hit, and as I was fast roping down, I was sliding down the rope, and it seemed like that was the longest rope I'd ever done. And it was about a 90-foot drop, as you're hanging onto the rope, sliding down. But I remember as we were going down, I heard, the crack and pop, and I was like, haven't really heard that before as we do our infill. Usually it took the Somalis about 15, 20 minutes before they might get some people together and start throwing a few rounds at us.
Okay.
Right? But this time we were coming out of the bird, and I heard those pops, and I'm like, oh, okay, this might be a little more zesty, right?
Spicy.
Yeah. And so, we hit the ground, and sure enough, they were ready to go. And so we're like, all right, well, let's do this. Delta had already gone through and secured all 17 prisoners. I mean, I can't say enough about those guys. They're masters of their craft, right? They broke through doors. They came in from the top, from the bottom. They went through every room. They secured everybody and had them waiting, right? And probably maybe a half hour into the mission, they had everybody zip tied together and done, and we were getting ready to call for extraction.
Nice.
And at that point, then, the first aircraft gets hit with an RPG, and it started to spin and went down. And the interesting part about that was I was a forward observer. I was on the aircraft radio net. I don't remember hearing him call, 6-1's hit, going down, whatever. But I remember us all kind of looking around at each other like, oh shit, what is going to happen now? And it was, I don't even think there was really even a decision that was made. It was like, we got to go over to the aircraft. There were things had happened progressively to various armed forces throughout the months leading up to us that the Somalis did to downed and or injured combatants. And we didn't want that happening to our guys. So it was all right, now we got to move. We got to go over to that, over to that aircraft and secure it until we can get everybody out. And I should mention, I didn't even talk about it. On infill. I think, and it's shown in the movie, Todd Blackburn missed the rope, or he was getting on the rope, whatever. He fell 60 feet, hit the street. And so they were trying to mobilize to get him evacuated. He, head trauma, neck trauma, all of that. So we were already dealing with that while the whole mission was going on. And, I should say, before we moved, we were taking fire from every direction.
Yeah.
It was crazy. And I remember this, the first time you're ever under fire like that, you always want to be like, oh yeah, I'm cool under fire. Nobody's cool. First time you get shot at, and it's especially if it gets close. I remember seeing these rounds stitch up the ground towards me. I'm like, oh shit! So I start running backwards, like I'm going to outrun these damn bullets.
Right.
And then I found an iron pipe. It was like 6 inches around, right, sticking up, maybe 6 inches. It was like a sewer pipe or something, right? And I swore I was going to get behind that 6-inch sewer pipe and hide my entire body behind it, and that was going to protect me, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm ducking behind this pipe, and I look up, and two of my buddies are behind a burned out car that's like 3 feet in front of me that I didn't even see. I didn't it didn't register. Get behind the effing car, get behind that little tiny ass pipe. And I looked up and they're like, get over here. I'm like, oh yeah, roll over to them. So, I'm protected by this burned out car. But yeah, so you never know what's actually going to come out of you when that happens, right?
Yeah.
But I guess I don't know how much you want me to go into, sort of the play by play of that. How much
Whatever
time?
you want to share, my man. This is such an extraordinary experience, and I think it's worth noting that most of us, this is a movie. This is your life, man. You're in the middle of this as a 23-year-old man. You're smack in the middle of Mogadishu with all this shit going on. I mean, that is just extraordinary. Could you talk a little bit about kind of the general feeling, because you guys are so well prepared? Was your confidence still high at this point, or?
Oh yeah, it was. We knew we were going to get out of this, I guess, right? Or it wasn't even part of the thought process, right? It was just, this is part of the mission. We're going to get through this mission and go back home. No big deal, right?
Okay.
I remember the first guy that I actually had to engage, and we were behind that burned out car, and all of a sudden this Somali ran out of a corner, and he was running away from us. But we had enough engagement that we knew you're not in the area to be peaceful, right?
Right.
And as this guy ran, his one arm came back, and we saw this AK in his hand. And we're like, AK, and we all just unloaded on this guy, and he fell like a stone. And I remember, and I can still see it today, he had this white shirt that was just kind of billowy, that was just kind of blowing in the wind over the top of him. And one of the guys that I was with right there was a medic, and I'm like, Doc, do we need to go administer aid? And he kind of looked at me. He's like, no. But part of the rules of engagement that have been drilled into our head was you need to be sure, if you're going to engage someone, that it's a life or death thing. Because if you're not, we're prosecuting you for murder and you're going to jail. And so that was in the back of all of our heads, like, you got to be damn sure. Well, at some point, this whole mindset switched. And for every individual out there, it was at a different point. And you talk to somebody else, their point is something, it's a different point of reference. But we all kind of came to the conclusion that if you're coming into this area, you are trying to kill us, and we are authorized deadly force, right? So that was sort of this switch, because every young Ranger that I know felt that same way. We're like, we don't want to go to jail for for killing somebody.
What a crazy thing, man! What a crazy thing to be sent into war. And somebody's going to say it wasn't a war; it was, but whatever. This is. You're being sent into combat. You're being sent into war to serve your people, and being told, if you do it wrong, we're going to send you to prison.
Right. And that causes hesitation. Yeah.
Of course. It's the worst.
And that hesitation, as you know, can cause harm.
Yes.
Right. So yeah. So everybody kind of made that switch in our heads, and at some point, and then of course that the first aircraft went down. We started to move towards it, and I think the first real terror for me started sinking in, right? As we were starting to move. Um, my friend Willie he was an infantry guy. He was the strongest human mentally that I had ever known. He was also, he was strong anyway. Just an example, Willie would run around the airfield and at Fort Benning in the summer. He would get halfway out and then take his shoes off and run the other half barefoot on asphalt in Georgia in July just to toughen his feet up. He was also known for doing, climbing ropes, where they usually have a couple that are spaced about 5 feet apart. Willie would grab one in each arm and Donkey Kong his way up to the top and Donkey Kong his way back down.
Good Lord.
Out, right? So Willie was a strong dude, right? And as we were moving to that crash site, and we came around this outcropping of cactus, and all of a sudden, we came under fire again, and Willie got hit in the leg, and he dropped like a stone. I mean, he was okay, but this was as I was behind him, and I'm like, Willie's the strongest human I've ever known. And this bullet just dropped him in a heartbeat. What the hell is it going to do to me?
Yeah.
So, we did our triage. We took off the essential equipment from him. Medic came up, got him, worked on the evac, and we just kept moving, right? Then I'm sure it was starting to show as we came up to we had to cross an intersection. And one of the Delta guys came up to me, and you have to pull security for guys as they're crossing the road, right? So I'm, looking down the road one way while another guy's looking down the road the other way, and we're shooting while somebody else runs through the intersection, right? And then you have somebody else that comes, takes your position, they shoot while you run, and So I was on security, and I start to fire a few rounds, and this Delta guy comes up to me, and he must have seen my eyes, because he's like, "Hey, Ranger, you all right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'll be okay." He's like, "Hey, don't worry about this. We're going to get out of this." I'm like, "Okay." I mean, if he wasn't fazed by it at all, I'm like, "Okay, all right, well, let's do this, man."
Yeah.
And come to find out, he was one of the guys that got killed later on that I didn't find out about until after the battle and that. But that guy right there kept my head in the game, so to speak. He's like, "Hey, we're going to get through this. No problem." I'm like, well, if he's not worried about it, I'm not worried about it. Let's go. Right. So we continued on. We got to, I got close to the downed aircraft. Then I got shot, and I got, taken inside a building. And that's where I spent the rest of the mission in there, listening to what was going on. And at quite a few times wondering if we were actually going to get out. They came around, they collected up ammo and grenades from guys that were wounded because they needed them out on the perimeter. My friend Randy came up to me. He's like, "Hey, don't worry. If they're not coming in here to get you, because they got to come through me, and I'm not going to let them do that." I said, "Thanks." Right. And then I started thinking about it. And after that, there was word that came around like, "Hey, if somebody's running through this doorway and they're not yelling 'Ranger, Ranger,' light them up. We might get overrun." And I'm starting to think, "Oh, fuck. We might get overrun. Wait, that means if we're getting overrun, Randy, who just said they're not coming through, they're not getting to you because I'm stopping them. That means he's gone. That means John is gone. That means everybody else is gone. Now what am I going to do? How am I going to live with the fact that I may or may not live? And what's What are my options? And yeah, I thought, okay, I've got a half a mag here. I fired 10 rounds and one is going to be for me because I'm not going to live through this.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I talked to Jesus. I talked to Allah. I talked to Buddha. I talked to all of them that
All
night.
those dudes, right?
Yep, every one of them. And I'm like,
Man,
I don't know if this is where my end is, but I want you to, I want the universe to know that you need to take care of some others, right? If this is where it's ending, that's where it ends. But I'm not ready to go just yet. I'd prefer not to, but we'll take it if we have to, right?
you know, it's interesting. You know, when I'm sure we all do. We study ancient warriors. We study, the thoughts of ancient warriors. Miyamoto Musashi wrote, that the way of the warrior is resolute acceptance of death, and it's words right now, right? It's word. It's a cool
Yes.
idea, to try to wrap your head around, but you're actually doing this. You're actually having to face this like right now.
Yeah, I did putting thoughts out of, about my fiance that I'd been writing a letter to that, God, I hope she's taken care of at the
Mm.
end of this. You get to a different place when you get there, and it's scary as all hell.
Oh my,
Jesus is scary.
that's gotta be.
You know, thankfully I never got to that point where I had to make the decision.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if I could have or not, but later on, as our as the relief convoy got there, we got all our wounded out and we sat inside an armored personnel carrier and listened to bullets bounce off of it. And I was like, why the fuck are we still sitting here? And what I didn't know was that they couldn't get the pilots out of the aircraft. They were dead, but they couldn't get their bodies out. And had I known that, honestly, I would have been fine with that. I would
Yeah.
have been like, okay, because that's part of that whole being brought up in the Rangers. And, we recited what they call the Ranger Creed every day. And it's 6 paragraphs of what it means to be a Ranger. Recognizing I volunteered as a Ranger, fully knowing the hazards of my chosen profession. I will always, and it goes on, right? And part of that is I will never leave a fallen comrade to fall into the hands of the enemy.
Mm.
And under no circumstance will I ever embarrass my country. And you can't say that every day in a formation with a bunch of other dudes that are repeating this back to you. You can't say that every day and not at some point believe that in your heart of hearts. And it becomes a part of you. And there's no question, right? If they are down, we will stand over their body until we can get them out. And if that means that I fall next to them, I fall next to them. And then somebody else will stand over me because that's what we do, right?
Mm.
Once that was, once they said, hey, they can't get the pilots out, I'm like, well, shit. All right, well, we're just going to sit here then. That's another different story of sitting there listening to bullets bounce off the outside of an armored personnel carrier while it's shooting back and thinking, how long are they going to wait until they can actually shoot an RPG here and blow this up? It's hard to miss this big a target, really. But they never did.
So it's just constant.
Yeah.
And I got to ask, and I want to fast forward this in a minute because
Yeah.
I want to understand how you get through all this
Mhm.
after. But I've got to ask you too. No man left behind, right? You are not.
Right.
You ain't leaving that man behind. But you can't get him out. And we talk a lot about post traumatic. I hate to say disorder. Post traumatic injury is what I call it. We talk a lot about that, but we don't always have conversations about moral injury. And when you're in a position where you've got to leave men behind, how does that impact you?
Yeah, it tears you up. Absolutely. And I know the guys that were not injured that were working on getting the pilots out. They were doing that under fire. They were strapping up tow straps to parts of the airframe to pull it apart and using the big extraction saws, to cut, sparks flying everywhere, just to get these guys out. And I think to your point, it's wishing you could do more.
Yes. Yeah.
And that honestly leads to a lot of post-traumatic stress. That's part of what, yeah, I was for years. It was, could I have done more? Was there something else I could have done or should have done? That self-doubt of, it didn't go perfectly. And could someone else have been saved? I don't know. And being able to make peace with that. That's the healing that you have to get to, which ain't easy to get to,
Oh God.
you know.
I want to fast forward us a little bit because I want to hear about that because it's you and I first came on each other's radar. I think at a Krav Maga test, like you were testing for black belt,
Yep.
and that's when I first realized who you were and kind of what you've been through. And I don't want to be the dude walking up asking questions, right? But one of the things I wondered wasn't tell me about it, but was how do you get home and then put together some semblance of life after this extraordinary, as you say, it's just 18 hours, but my God, man, it's a hell of an 18 hours. How do you
Yeah.
get home and then put a life back together?
Not easy, not easily. There, one has to be an acknowledgement that you've been through that, you know. And in the 90s, we actually had a formation to where we were told, okay, if anybody thinks they need to go talk to a counselor, fall out of formation and go back over there.
Yeah.
Amazingly, no one fell out of formation,
Imagine,
right?
imagine that.
And therapy has come a long way since then, because when we were when I was still in Landstuhl, Germany, there was a psychologist who was assigned to our ward. They're like, hey, everybody that was just there, why don't you come down to the day room? And, we're all in various states of disrepair. Guys, bandages still on them, stitches in their neck and staples. And they're like, okay, you just came through something pretty significant. Why don't you tell me about it? And we're all like, okay, how about fuck you and the horse you came in on? I'm not talking to you about anything. I want to know where my guys are. How are they doing? And you're not giving me any information right now. And, just the anger just built. I mean, that's where it started. And then, not having any sort of follow-on care. Yeah, right. Because again, in the 90s, people are worried about losing a security clearance because of the stigma of post-traumatic stress disorder. Yes.
Yeah, man.
So yeah, I mean, I'm one of the few people that's actually still on my first wife, and I'll be perfectly honest with you. It's because of her, because every guy came back and we were like, we need normal. We want to be, just a regular guy. And they grabbed the first, girl they could, and I'm going to marry you, and we're going to have a white picket fence around our house and a dog and 3 kids. And she was my fiance. I was home on convalescent leave. I'm like, yeah, it's time. We got to get married now. I don't care about any of that. I need normal. She's like, I can't be an army wife. I can't do that. So we're not going to get married yet. And I'm like, that really that's a problem.
Yeah.
To her credit, she stuck to her guns, and I ended up getting out. We're one of the few couples that are still together because she's like, time out. We got to slow this up. Um, you know, and we all went through our phase of, I'm going to go out and drink hard and, blackout drunk, and nobody understands what we're going through, except us, and, getting into fights and all of that stuff. Yeah, we went through all of that. And even, like when I got out of service, you go through your compensation and uh, sessions where they evaluate you, whether or not you know, you broke an ankle or knee or whatever, right?
Right.
Do you want to claim post-traumatic stress? Nope, not at all. No way. Didn't. And I didn't for 30 years.
Deny. 30 years.
Yeah. And actually, I honestly just went through the process, and through the years, different jobs I've been at. I was a high school history teacher. I worked at a military museum. Um, I was even a special ed teacher, which God bless those people.
Okay.
um,
Let me ask, man,
because I
you've
couldn't
got,
do it.
gosh, you're in this position now where, you're a bad mofo, man. I mean, you're a ranger, you've been through all this shit. Now you come home and now you're just Mike, right? How's that impacting you?
Um, it was tough when I went back to school. Um, I was in a class, and honestly, the PTSD, and I didn't call it that at the time. I know it is what it was now, or that's what it was now. It was right around the time Bosnia was spinning up,
Hmm.
and there was an ROTC cadet in the class, and he raised his hand and he said something. Well, you know what? We just need to drop a few bombs over here and do this. And
So easy.
the rage just built up, and finally, I mean, I couldn't contain it, and I got up and I was screaming at this kid, and I'm sticking a finger in his face, and I'm like, you don't have a clue what the fuck happens when bombs hit the ground, and I'm just like raging at this kid in the middle of class, and this professor is standing up in front of class, and he's just kind of like, and I caught myself, and I'm like, I'm done here. And I just walked out. I left everything at my, desk, and I walked out in the hallway, and I was just like, I was pacing like a cat, and I was so enraged. And about 5 minutes later, the professor came out and he's like, that was pretty intense. I'm like, yeah, you know what? Motherfuckers start talking about this shit, and they've never been there. They don't know what happens this and blah. And he's like, it's cool. You should take the rest of the day off. And I'm like, okay, thanks. Right. I did, various bouts of therapy. I tried it. It sort of worked. And again, this is in the late 90s.
Right.
People didn't even know Somalia had happened, really.
Oh, God.
Right. And so, having to explain this just compounded everything. Yeah, I still have a short temper. I still, I do kind of overreact on things. And it never really hit me until I officially started that process of, okay, maybe I'm going to open a claim
Okay.
on for post-traumatic stress.
Do I understand right? 30 years. You got some help in the form of some therapy, but it wasn't terribly effective. Do I understand that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now you hit a point maybe 30 years later where you decide to make the claim. Justified. My God, yeah. Do you start getting help then? Is it coming in then?
So that whole process, I I reached out to a therapist through. I did a stint in the National Guard, and I had kept in contact with this particular officer, and I knew he was a psychologist. And I'm like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. I should probably talk to somebody. He's like, you know what? I don't do that kind of therapy, but let me get you in contact with somebody who does. And he hooked me up with this person, and I said, okay, um, I think I'm going to put this claim in for PTSD. He's like, okay, well, let's have a session. We'll talk about it. And in the interim, as I was gathering up more evidence, I asked my wife to write a letter to submit as evidence that, yeah, apparently I do have post-traumatic stress. And she wrote it, and she had come back to me one morning, and she said, hey, here's the letter. She said, drink your coffee this morning. Get yourself in a good mood before you read it, and understand that this is coming at you with love. I said, okay. And I read through the letter, and I cried
Mm.
because she really did lay out, this is my experience being married to this person for 30 years. And I knew him before he went there. And before he went there, he was like this. And afterwards, he wasn't like that. There are anger issues with him. Uh, there is a shortness of, a temper. There is an unemotional state that he can get in. And this is how it's affected our marriage over 30 years. And yes, we've been to counseling. We've done these things. This is how it's affected our kids, and our kids were exposed to that. And as I read it, I was just like, fuck, I was that much of an asshole. And it brought me to tears. And I literally, I called my kids and I'm like, I'm sorry. I had no idea, you know. I was just trying to do the best I could. Um,
I gotta say, man, because that's a hard read. I was at a first responder retreat, and one of the things that the psychologist, who's a great person, works with first responders here locally, tasked me with doing. She said, I would like you to go back and ask your daughter what's it like for me to be your dad. And if you told me there was a dude in the parking lot with a machete, I'd have been like, cool, I'm gonna go get that son of a bitch. I'll be right back. You tell me, go ask your daughter what's it like to be my daughter, and I'm terrified, man. I'm like sweating there in the seat. It's an intense
yep.
moment when you hear what it's like for the people that you love.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I had a moment with my son, after he graduated college, and we were out, we were talking, and he's like, it was hard growing up as your son, Dad. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? He's like, no, no, no. You cast such a long shadow.
Mm.
And he was kind of referring to, oh yeah, your dad, because he had heard it from all his friends, like, oh, your dad was in Blackhawk Down. He's an Army Ranger and he's doing this. And he's like, you are, you're sort of this image. And I've always felt that I had to measure up to that. And I'm like, Jesus, God, no, you don't have to. I want you to measure up to you, son. And that's what's important. And you are measuring. You're the best you ever. And that's all I want. I want you to be happy, That was tough. And yeah, we shed some tears in a bar. And, then my wife came walking over. She's like, what'd you say? I'm like, nothing. Dad and son stuff. Leave me alone.
Nothing. I'm not crying anymore.
Indoor sandstorm, right? Leave me alone.
Man, you've gone through all this, and you've got to. I want to ask you. You've been through this extraordinary struggle. Your family's been through this extraordinary struggle vicariously, right? To some degree. Finally, after 30 years, maybe you start getting some help. And what does life look like today for you?
It's an acceptance. It kind of gets back to that acceptance of death. It's also an acceptance of the change that has occurred in me. Like I said, I went through a number of different therapy sessions, and one of the best ones that I ever got was from my guy, Ed Tick, who really, for me, sets the bar on post-traumatic stress and how to deal with it. And he said, the person that leaves to go to war is not that person has died. Mm. They're never going to come back. There are elements of them, but the person that comes back is a completely different person. And you have to understand that you are that different person. There are still elements of, that kid that grew up in Central Illinois was, a co-captain of the wrestling team and blah, 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 all of that. But there's a difference, and being able to recognize that difference, as first responder, we have a fight or flight instinct. It's there. And I run into it almost on the daily of whether it's somebody confronting me, asking a question about why did I do this? Well, are you challenging me? Because my instinct is going to be, we're going to fight about this.
Right.
And being able to put that in check and go, take a deep breath. Think about this. They are not challenging me to a fight.
Right.
I don't need to defend myself. This is not a life and death kind of thing. Um, and not saying that there are those that have that flight response, you know, those that have been on the recipient of domestic violence.
Mm-hmm.
They may have that flight. I got to just make myself go away, hide, understanding that that's part of you, and being able to work through and recognize when that's coming out, when that's manifesting.
When you see that.
Uh-huh.
And I just did a video about this the other day. I was at a professional bull riding event a couple weeks back, and I've been so good, keeping the anger in check. I'm not responding to things that are just feelings or not facts. I got set off hard, and it was just there was a moment where I just caught it, and it's extraordinary when we're able to get to that point. I'm laughing about it now because I didn't do it, right?
Yeah, right.
But that's the only reason I'm laughing about it. If I had done it, it would have been a very different story. Mike, can you tell us, in terms of recovery, in terms of living your life today, in terms of kind of being self-directed, you're in charge of recovery, there it is. What does it look like to be well today, to the extent that you are?
Being able to reach out. And that's, especially first responders, you want to be the one that takes care of everything, and you can handle everything, recognizing that there are some things that we can't handle, and being comfortable enough to reach out to just that one person, or that one animal. I'm a firm believer in dog therapy, and when I'm getting really worked up, got to go hang with my pups. But having that one person you can call up and go, hey, I'm having some issues, and I have that one friend who I went through it was a big auto accident. I was on the front line of it, bodies laying in the middle of a highway, and afterwards I was having some real, stress about it. And, like I wanted to do more. I didn't have a trauma bag. I couldn't do this. All I could do was direct traffic around these two bodies laying in the street. And I called my buddy up, and I'm telling him all of this. And he was there with me in Somalia, and we were roommates before Somalia and then afterwards as well. And he got me out of it, and he said the most ridiculous thing on the phone, because I'm like, and I'm sitting there thinking about these people, and they were, this is what the situation was. And he just stopped. He's like, well, you know what? They were probably sinners, and they probably deserved it. And I'm like, wait, what the hell? You can't say that. He's like, nah, dude, I'm kidding. Listen, you were doing everything that you could with what you had. I'm like, well, yeah, I guess. And he's like, no, you were. You need to be okay with that. There was nothing more that you could do.
Yeah.
And he kind of brought me back in and kind of level set. You've got to have that person, whether it's a hotline, or
whatever it is,
best friend. It doesn't matter. You've got to be okay with reaching out at your local.
Mm-hmm. Man, we're coming to a close here. I want to say a couple of things I'm taking away from this, just that I know are going to help me in my recovery, and they're going to help other people. Is all of the things that you've been through. You can't stay isolated. You got to talk to other people. You've got to listen to the people around you, which, thank God you have people around you, right? Your wife, and you're in a position where you have those people around you. But even if you don't, reach out to somebody, reach out to a 988, reach out to Here Tomorrow, reach out to me, or whoever, but you got to reach out, and we got to talk about it. I really want to thank you for coming on the show, man. I mean, I know this is going to help people, because every time guys like you talk about your experience, we have people reach out to us when they see things like this on the media. And, in the pop culture, Blackhawk Down is one of the movies that I know makes grown men cry, But this is just grown dudes crying over a movie, and you lived through that nightmare of a scenario, and here you are, right? It's
Right.
just it's
Yeah.
inspirational. It's impressive.
There, but for the grace of God.
There,
Right.
but
Yeah.
brother, I want to thank you again for coming on the show. It was an extraordinary conversation. I look forward to more. I want to talk to you about some ideas that I have for a season 2 um,
Okay.
that might play out well for us, and I really look forward to hearing more of your story. If anybody's out there listening, they need help, they can certainly reach out to heretomorrow.org. They can get help. You can call 988 if you're in crisis. You can get help. Guys like Mike can do it. Guys like me can do it. You can do it too. Mike, thanks again very much for being on the show, brother.
My pleasure. Thank you.
You be safe.